Welcome to the DMI Advocacy Update Series. I'm Jason Elster, president of Downtown Madison, Inc., and we're excited to have another advocacy update. It's a new series for 2023. We provide members and the greater community an opportunity to learn about DMI's advocacy work, initiatives, and priorities, and get a deep dive into some of the most pressing issues impacting downtown. We've got a great speaker here that is working on a lot of things, all things transportation and transit oriented in downtown. We have Justin Stuehrenberg, who is the general manager of a Madison Metro Transit System. He's going to talk about bus rapid transit and the network redesign and all the exciting projects that Metro is going through right now. But before we get to Justin, we've got some updates of all things DMI advocacy. And then we're also going to hear from one of our sponsors. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for our sponsors, Sinair, who's our major series sponsor, the Fiore Companies, and Hush Blackwell. So a huge thanks to Sinair, Fiore Companies, and Hush Blackwell. We're going to hear from our good friend at Sinair, the Senior Vice President of Business Development, Chris Gillings. Chris, how are you doing today?
Jason, I'm well. How are you?
Doing great. How's your summer?
It's been good. I mean, you fit a lot of busy into as many warm months as we're granted in Madison, and you dodge smoke and you dodge rain and you dodge all of those things. But it's been a wonderful summer so far.
Good. Well, I'm just glad we're dodging rain because as a son of a former farmer, rain feeds us all. So it's good to see the rain again. Although I'm sure I'll ask Justin if he likes the rain and the thunderstorms. It's probably harder on his network. But Chris, what's new with you and the team at Sinair?
Yeah, continuing to advance, and thanks, Jason, first of all, and to everybody at DMI for the work that goes into this series. We've been sponsors of Nosh at Noon before this, and really find that the policy and advocacy update series meshes well with our broader why statement, which is we look to invest in and support those that are trying to do things to build healthier communities. And nothing could be closer to the truth about DMI and its mission and how it supports downtown Madison than that. So we're proud to be part of the series. We continue to find opportunities even in today's uncertain and sometimes challenging financial times to find ways to invest primarily in affordable housing, but also in community development projects across our footprint. So we're grateful to have great backing from our investors and sponsors and folks that share our mission with us. And I'm grateful to have Justin here today. Obviously, I think like most of us in Madison right now, we're dodging a lot of construction with the exciting developments on bus rapid transit. But I think those that really know the geographical challenges of our downtown, including transit routes, are what do you do in a geographically confined space to be able to make sure that you maintain a vibrant community? And nothing is more important than getting people to that. And a lot of what Metro is working on is really going to advance that mission. And so we're grateful to hear a little bit about what's going on with Metro Transit and how they're trying to enhance the experience in downtown Madison.
Well, Chris, thank you to the team at Sinair for all of your continued partnership downtown. Y'all do amazing projects, continuing to have the conversation about what is housing affordability. And as I like to say, the flip side of the coin of housing affordability is transportation and transit. You need a good system to get people in and around to work and where they want to be. And we're excited to hear more from Justin about what's happening at Metro Transit. Before we do that, though, we're going to hear an update on Downtown Madison Inc.'s advocacy over the last months. We've been very busy. We want to start with an introduction to a new member of the downtown team. We're excited to welcome Matt Trammell, the new executive director of Madison Central Business Improvement District. He started just a few weeks ago. If you get a chance, say hi. We're so lucky to have this great new member to the downtown team. He has over 20 years of experience in community communications, community building, media, event planning, and various opportunities. He's been in Chicago the last several years and moved up here in Madison a couple of years ago. And so we're excited to have Matt as part of the team. Find him at the farmer's market, find him at the night market, wherever it might be. Stop by and say hello to our new team member, Matt Trammell, and the director of Madison Central Business Improvement District. We're also following a lot of projects, development projects that are happening right now through the DMI Development Tracker. For those that don't know, DMI hosts a development tracker on our website. In the upper right-hand corner, we track all development that's in the public eye. So any project that is in the neighborhood meetings up through about 6 months of construction. And right now there are over 6,500 apartment buildings in the works in the downtown, which is the Ahara to Camp Randall. There's just so much happening. I think also importantly, there are several culturally important projects that we're seeing in and around the downtown to help what Chris talked about, to bring people downtown, to create those magnets and that vibrancy that we need and bring those folks here. Some of those key projects are the Wisconsin History Center at the top of state. Construction is going to start on this magnificent project in just a few months here at the beginning of 2024, and it'll be finished by 2026. If you haven't, take a look at the Historical Society's website and look at the renderings of what's going to happen at the top of State Street, where the History Museum is now. It's very exciting. Just across the street in Kitty Corner, we have the Wisconsin Veterans Museum, and the state of Wisconsin appropriated $9 million for the Veterans Museum to purchase 30 on the square and start the process of what a new Veterans Museum could look like. Just going to be incredible what the top of state could be. Right now, it already is the #1 used pedestrian intersection in the entire state of Wisconsin. And to have two cultural magnets like the History Center and the Veterans Museum anchoring that site, it could only be fantastic things to come here in the top of state. So we're very excited. Also at the bottom of state, the 400 through 600 blocks, and I'm sure Justin and I will talk about this, the buses were removed from the 400, 500, and 600 blocks of State Street with Metro Transit's network redesign. The city's going through a process to what could happen with that space and to reimagine it. Right now, they're talking about short-term pilot projects and potentially closing down part of that street sometime later this year. DMI is also interested in the conversation of what could happen long-term, and we're advocating for a strategic plan, public-private partnership, to really take a look at State Street and what this area could be on the 400 through 600 blocks. The 100, 200, and 300 blocks will continue to have busing, including the new bus rapid transit. I'm sure Justin and I will get into construction schedules there, and we're excited to have bus rapid transit in and around downtown to help people move. People often ask me, though, why are we seeing so much development, both these cultural amenities and all of these apartments? And one of the reasons is the amount of Gen Z workers that are moving into Madison. The numbers really are staggering. We're top 10 metro in the country, even though we're about the 80th biggest metro in the country, in the total net Z migration. And just think about that. We're on par with cities like Austin and Nashville, which are 2 to 3 to 4 times larger than we are. We're seeing all this great young Gen Z talent move here, and many of those folks are moving into downtown. Another statistic which we get from our good friend Zach Brandon of the Greater Madison Chamber of Commerce is that we're one of only 5 cities in America where 20% of our workforce is made up of 18 to 26-year-olds or Gen Z. These folks want to live downtown. They want to be a part of downtown, and many of them want different transit solutions. So we're going to talk to Justin about that later. They don't want to always be dependent on a car. And so creating new infrastructure for them is key, and that is exactly what Justin is doing. One of the other key topics we're looking at is the density height bonus, which is a resolution that was passed by the council earlier this year that allows for more density in a building if you have affordable housing. DMI generally supports this, but we want to make sure that it remains voluntary. And we were watching very closely the Core Spaces development project at the corner of Johnson and Bassett over the last few weeks. Originally, the council did not approve that project, but they did course correct, and last week did approve the project. And I think this is very important because it does add specific in units that we need in to the downtown. This is a project that met the city's code, that was within the downtown guidelines and the existing height map, and it will create more density for downtown. And so we want to ensure that we're creating more units overall, but we're using this density height bonus in a voluntary fashion for those developers that want to take it. So we're happy to see that that project did pass. One of the other final items we're following is potential federal legislation called the Downtown Revitalization Act. I happen to be the co-chair of the International Downtown Association's U.S. Government Relations Committee, and we're zealously advocating for this pending legislation called the Downtown Revitalization Act, which is federal legislation trying to help with conversion of office buildings into housing, and in particular, affordable housing. Senator Debbie Stabenow is going through the process of creating legislation now in the Senate. We've got both Republican and Democrats in the House that are doing the same. And so DMI and other organizations like are zealously advocating for this tool that we can use potentially here in Madison to help subsidize some of these conversions from office to housing. That is what's happening in the DMI world. Now we're going to get to the larger space and what's happening with Metro Transit. We've got Justin Stuehrenberg, the general manager of Metro, here with us today. How are you, Justin? You doing well?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. We're doing great. Thank you for joining us. You've been a good friend since you moved to the city over the last couple of years. And I got to say, if you want to know something about transit and transportation, Justin is the guy for you. He knows everything. No pressure there as I start to ask you interview questions. Do you know everything?
I cannot say that, but I hope to be able to answer your question.
Can you provide us an overview of what's happening at Metro Transit? Because there is a lot happening right now, but I want to start off with what are the statistics? Obviously, we saw some differences pre-pandemic to where we are. The pandemic obviously changed everything about downtown and usage. What's happening with the fixed routes and the ridership numbers and the number of buses? What's the data you're seeing right now from 2019 to 2023 of today?
Sure. And if it's okay, I might level set a little bit.
Absolutely.
Metro is it's probably about the 50th largest transit agency in the country. As you mentioned, Jason, we're about the 80th largest city. So we do punch above our weight quite a bit. And in 2019, we had about 13 million boardings, which puts us equivalent to many cities that are 4 times our size, like Louisville and Nashville, Cincinnati, Indianapolis. And we had ridership that's about 25% more than Nashville, for example. And so we are a city that relies on transit and uses transit heavily. Obviously, the pandemic hurt transit across the board, across the country. And we did see our ridership fall to about 8 million in 2021 from that peak, from that 13 million in 2019. But we've seen that come back steadily. And we are roughly 75 to 80% returned in terms of our ridership. And that puts us well above many other cities around the country that are still more in the 60 to 70% range. And part of that for us has been that we haven't fully restored our service until last month, which we'll talk about with the network redesign. But we expect that trend to continue up as we've now restored our service levels. As things get back to whatever the new normal is, we certainly have seen a big reduction in our kind of 9 to 5 office commuters. But in some sectors of our ridership, we've actually seen increases over 2019 levels. Campus, for example, is higher now than it was in 2019. And actually our weekend ridership is higher than it was in 2019. And so we really just, as an organization, need to shift our focus and our markets are changing and we need to adapt to those markets. And part of that, you mentioned number of buses. So we were in 2019, we had 215 buses. And we are actually in the process of actually bringing that down to about 190. And part of that is because by focusing our service more on weekends, more on the off-peak times, less focused on the 9 to 5 commuters and more across the population as a whole, those buses are out there. Each individual bus is out there longer, but we need fewer of them because there's fewer of them in the peak. So again, I think that we are in a very strong position our trend is very strong upward, but we still have some ground to make up pre-pandemic.
Question sort of, who is the average rider for Metro Transit? I'm a rider. I ride very frequently. I ride the D line. If you ever want to see me, D1 or D2, Metro Transit network redesign made life easier for me. Who is the average rider? Where do you see the riders in 2019 and the changes you're seeing now? Because you talked about how you're seeing more campus and you're seeing more weekend activity. Who's riding the bus?
That's a great thing about Madison is that people of all groups are riding the bus. Whereas in some cities it's very limited to those with lower incomes or those in certain ethnic or racial groups. In Madison, it truly is a citywide cross-section of people using the bus. And so we don't really have one target market or one particular group. But being nimble and continuously seeking out where those opportunities are and where people's needs are will allow us to make those adjustments as necessary. But we don't have we don't have an average rider, I suppose. We've got a whole cross section.
I think that's a good thing. Honestly, everyone should be a rider. I'm a big fan. Be a rider. What I would say is if you're own a business, help with buying bus passes for your work. We do that here at DMI. It's a great thing to do. As you saw obviously decrease in numbers and the numbers are going up nicely. You were also able to invest in electrification of your bus fleet to a very significant number. Tell us about, where you're moving forward with the electrification of the bus fleet and many of these sort of federal grants that you all have been able to win over the last couple of years to really, I think, accelerate more electrification of your bus fleet.
Yeah, absolutely. So we received a federal grant, I believe in 2018, for our first 3 electric buses. And those were placed into service last year. So we do currently have 3 in service. They're largely running, they don't have a ton of range. They're more a proof of concept for us and getting our maintenance staff familiar with them, getting the passengers familiar with them, and overall just testing out the concept. We are moving full scale in that direction though. So as part of again, we'll talk about our bus rapid transit project, we'll be buying another 46 that will be here in roughly the next year. And then we actually just a month ago were announced for another federal grant, awarding another $38 million locally for us, which will include the purchase of another 16 electric buses, in addition to charging infrastructure and solar infrastructure to charge them. So within the next 2 years, we will go from having 3 to having 65 electric buses. And so it's a big shift. But ultimately, it's one that we feel strongly that the technology is there. We've got operational plans in place to make sure that they're successful. And the passengers and the general public, other than a reduction in noise and exhaust fumes and things like that, shouldn't see really any change in the service and the way that they're working for the passengers. Because, as we've said all along, that the most important thing, the greenest thing about a bus is that people ride it. And secondary to that is the fuel it uses. But we had to be absolutely sure that the transition to electric vehicles wouldn't impact the quality of our service. And we feel confident that we have a plan in place that will make sure that is successful going forward.
Well, it seems like, Justin, I'm gonna have to pull out my Minnesota accent and say that's a good 2-for-1. You've got people riding the buses, but they're also riding now a much more efficient bus. And the transportation is a major part of our sustainability picture. This is pretty key. Why do you think that the federal government is investing so significantly into Madison? I'm sure it partially has to do with the excellent relationships that the mayor and others have, but it really seems like you guys are proving that you can do something special with these buses, and you're becoming almost a test market, right, for the electrification of buses in the country.
Yeah, and I will say it's not unique to us. There's a lot of money with the infrastructure bill that was passed, targeted at the low emissions and zero emission bus market. But we are certainly taking more steps to implement those sorts of services. I think partially because of our commitment to environmental issues here in Madison, but also frankly because of our growth and our opportunity to do these sorts of things. By expanding our service into suburban communities, we do have a need for more buses. It's not just replacing old existing buses. And we have a lot of buses that can be replaced. There are certain timelines that we have to meet with federal funding before we can replace the buses. And so those two things in combination they actually allow us to replace or to buy a lot of new buses, and the money for those new buses happens to be for electric buses now.
Much of the network is changing. We've talked about it on the edges here, but the Metro Transit network redesign has been really a big change in the bus routing and the theories about how we move people in our city. What's the purpose of the Metro Transit network redesign, and how is implementation going?
Sure. So the Metro redesign kind of was born out of a survey that was done, I believe, in like 2015, 2016, that showed that people of color and people of lower incomes had tremendously longer travel times on the bus and required number of transfers as the population as a whole of the city. And I think instinctively we understood why, and that's because many of the lower income communities and the communities of color are more weighted towards the periphery of the city, and not concentrated in the downtown core. And so with the old system, with the transfer points that were in place, basically everyone that was outside of the bubble of the transfer points was forced to go on really infrequent routes that circulated through neighborhoods, making one-way loops through neighborhoods, taking a long time just to get to a transfer point that was often at a location that nobody really wanted to go. They were just going there to make a transfer to another route. And so what that resulted in is just some astronomical travel times for people, especially south of the Beltline and kind of east of the Interstate 90, 39. And so when we set about this redesign, it was really targeted at improving those outcomes and those travel times for the people that live in those areas. Kind of secondary importance was just simplifying the network for everyone, and providing more direct service. Again, I, as a transit professional, have been in the industry for a long time. When I came here, the network even confused me for a month. It was just that complicated. And so we can only imagine what it's like for, a new person moving to town. And so providing more simple, straightforward, direct routes that operate more frequently, more times of day and more days of the week, was really the target, in addition to improving the travel times for some of the more peripheral parts of the city. So, and I think we achieved that. We've anecdotally seen a lot of benefit, and our analysis showed that a lot of people will benefit or have benefited already. The rollout started on June 11th. It was actually an overnight change, which happened, really is the only way you can do that, unfortunately, because it's very stressful. But I think it's been extremely successful. And a big part of that is, how much preparation the team put into doing it. And certainly there are people who are negatively impacted and things are not perfect. But compared to some of the issues that have come up in other cities that have attempted this, I think ours has been relatively light, and well responded to by the public. And so we're now in a process of identifying any tweaks that do need to be made. Like, for example, probably the biggest source of concern we heard was a connection from the UW hospital to the west directly. And we are implementing a fix for that in August. And then around the system, when you design all entirely new routes that you've never run before, it's impossible to get the travel times correct exactly. Especially in a summer where there's lots of construction and detours and closures and everything. And so there are some running time changes, travel time changes that we need to adjust in the schedules to make sure that the buses are running on time. But we're committed to making those tweaks and adjustments, and overall feel very, very confident that that things are going quite well.
The Metro Transit Network redesign is part and parcel of a larger project to increase transit in the Madison community, which this mayor has been supportive of, and as the council has. It's part of a larger plan also with bus rapid transit, right? The way I look at it, bus rapid transit becomes the backbone of the system. But what is bus rapid transit? Why is it so important for Madison? And what's the progress right now, as many are starting to see the construction begin over the last few months?
Sure. So the network redesign is service change across the entire network. The bus rapid transit is an infrastructure project along one route in that network. So that's the key distinction there, is that network redesign is service, BRT is infrastructure. So now that the network redesign has created the route A, that route is being upgraded with the BRT infrastructure. And that's being done for a couple different reasons. One is travel time. So bus rapid transit is installing dedicated lanes for the buses to make sure that they don't get stuck in traffic. it's installing signal priority, so the buses can have some influence over the traffic signals, allow a green to hold for a few extra seconds to get the bus through, or start a few seconds earlier. It's installing stations with level boarding or near level boarding, which allows people to just basically walk onto the bus without having to step up. And that particularly is important for those who have limited mobility or in mobility devices, because it can really speed up the boarding process for them. And so all of these things combined really speed up the trip. And so I don't have the exact numbers, but our anticipation is that somewhere in the order of 30% reduction in travel time from kind of East Town to West Town, which both will encourage more people to use it, right? If the bus moves faster, we'll generally see more ridership, but also reduce our costs of running it. And so travel time and speeds are kind of the holy grail in transit, because it's rare that you get something that is a true win-win, like travel times are for transit, because if we can speed up the bus, it improves the customer experience and quickens their trip, but it also reduces the number of buses we need on that route. And so we can deploy those buses in other parts of the city, and while still keeping the same level of service in the corridor. So and then the other piece of BRT is just the comfort level. So the stations, in addition to being raised up to speed up the boarding process, they'll also be fully under roof. They'll have security cameras. They'll have signs telling you when the next bus will arrive. And then they'll even have like a heater where you can hit a button and get a little blast of heat in the cold winter. So trying to improve that comfort and speed up that trip are really the hallmarks of bus rapid transit. And ours is, as you mentioned, under construction. We expect that to be complete next summer, the construction. There'll be some period of us doing training and testing for our drivers and making sure everything's in working order, with the plan to open sometime in the fall of 2024. And so far everything is on target for that. And then, so yeah, everything's going quite well with that project. Particularly in the downtown area, we've intentionally held off on some of the construction because we wanted to wait to get through the construction event, or the summer event season, before many of that construction activity starts to happen downtown. But for those of you who've been on Mineral Point Road anytime recently, it's moving along quite nicely.
One of the things that I like about bus rapid transit, I would highly recommend, if you're in a city, try bus rapid transit, because it is a very slick and easy way to get around. And it's that ease. One of the other things that, Justin, is the importance of frequency. So you basically can go down to a station and know that something in peak times could be there every 7.5 minutes, even slower, 10 or 15. It just makes that trip much easier. Why is that important? Why do you have to take the guesswork out of transit for people to want to use it?
Yeah, so we actually have had a consultant use the analogy of, what if your garage door only opened every hour and you had to just time your departure for it, right? That's kind of what frequency is for transit.
Can I use that one? That's a really good one.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But it's important because for some people you can time your trip whenever the bus is coming, and that's fine. But for most people who are trying to get to their job at a certain time, the frequency is really important, because the bus that gets you there on time might actually get you there 40 minutes early. It's just the only one that you can take and get there on time. And so for people that rely on the service or use the service, frequency is very important, because you aren't so constrained to the schedule. You can just walk out, at least for some of the higher frequency routes. You can just walk out and take the next bus that comes, and it's very simple and convenient. And you have a lot more autonomy around how you travel, and you aren't waiting around for extended periods of time for the bus schedule. So and it's a bit counterintuitive, but often in other cities, when you double the frequency or double the headway, or double the frequency of the route, meaning the bus comes twice as often, you'll often see ridership respond on an even greater basis. So just that extra autonomy, the extra flexibility for folks really is appealing for people who may not ride the bus on a regular basis now. Just that increase in frequency can bring them out.
So the first line is obviously I guess I shouldn't say obviously, that's why we're here. We're telling everyone it runs from East Town to West Town through downtown, grabs Madison College, UW campus, and then snakes its way to West Town. You at the same time are preparing for potentially line number 2. Tell us what the potential second line could be for bus rapid transit.
Yeah, so that's also it's in place now with the redesign as Route B. So basically from the north side of Madison, overlapping with the core BRT segment from basically Milwaukee Avenue through campus, and then extending south from Park Street and then Fish Hatchery Road all the way into Fitchburg. So that project is really just getting off the ground now. We are planning to submit some applications for federal funding here in the next couple of months. And we would hope to be under construction on that sometime in 2026. With the hope of opening in 2027. So it would have all the same features as the first line that's under construction, and again would largely follow the current B route.
I think this is important to know that, we're already looking at what the next could be, because bus rapid transit is not just about one line. From DMI's perspective, this is very important for moving people around the entire community. So we need multiple routes, and including extensions into suburbs like Middleton and Sun Prairie that I know you're working with very closely. One of the other highlights for me, and maybe this is me being a transportation geek, is the new technology that you're installing in and around the system. Those that haven't ever use your phone, Google. It's just amazing to be able to track your bus by like the minute as to where you are. But you're also doing new pay box or fare box technologies as well. What do these technological improvements look like, and how will this make life easier for those that ride transit?
Yeah, so right now our fare system is pretty antiquated, using paper magstripe cards, and when you want to buy a pass, you either have to go physically into an office somewhere, or order it online and have it mailed to you. Probably next summer of 2024, we expect to roll out full scale our new fare collection system. That will be an account-based system. So folks will be able to use a tap card of some sort and have that connected to an account where you have a virtual wallet of funds there. To be able to add funds to that account through, mobile phone or web browser with a credit card. You'll also be able to go into certain places, retail establishments or kiosks, and add funds with cash into that account. And then for those who have the ability, we'll also be able to accept your phone as a payment card. You'll also be able to use Apple Pay and Google Wallet. And then you'll also be able to use contactless credit cards for just the one-off trips. For people who aren't local, you'll be able to just tap, contactless credit card, just like you can at a coffee shop. And that all of that system together, will, I think, streamline the whole requirement of distributing passes and carrying around paper magstripe cards that sometimes get corrupted or damaged in some way. But the other thing it does is it unlocks the door to a lot of other features that can be employed using these account-based systems. So one of which is free or time transfer times. So right now, if you want to get a transfer, you would need to ask the driver to print you a transfer ticket, and you'd need to pull that out of the machine and carry it with you to make the next transfer. With the new system, just you tap your card, and then every time you tap it in the next 2 or 3 hours, it doesn't charge you again. So it's just an automatic recognition of those transfers. And the other thing we can do is what's called fare capping. So right now we have a not insignificant number of people who ride the bus enough times to justify buying a monthly pass, but they cannot afford $65 up front to buy a monthly pass, right? And so some of those folks end up spending $80, $90, $100 a month on transit just because they don't have enough money to buy the pass up front. And so it's just another illustration of how expensive it is to be poor, right? We can address that with this new account-based system by using fare capping. So basically, every time you tap your card, it deducts $2 just like a normal fare, but up to a limit. So once you hit that monthly limit of $65, it doesn't charge you anymore. Every ride after that is free. And so basically what that does is it allows us to guarantee that nobody is being unfairly or having to pay an unfair amount just because they couldn't afford all that money on the front end. So and then it also allows us to do more flexible programs for low-income people, including creating a half-fare program for those who would qualify. So all of those things will be unlocked with the new system, and I think it's going to be significantly more user-friendly for everyone.
Wow, this is it's all very exciting. And one smart transportation engineer told me once, Justin, that what slows down the buses more than anything is people getting on and off the bus. And so if you can have these technologies where you just boom, flash, you're in, it speeds it up for all of us and makes this network. I think the last question I have is about Gen Zers. We talked about in our advocacy update. We're seeing a lot of these young folks moving to Madison. Companies like Epic, right? They're adding 4,000 employees this year. 90% of them are ages 22 to 26. We've seen the statistics. They're traveling less, what's called vehicle miles traveled, less than other generations before them. And a transit system is very important. What excites you most about the future of Madison Transit after we get the completion of the bus rapid transit and this Metro Transit network redesign? What are you excited about the next level to take this community to that next place for transit for all of our community members?
Yeah, so I think exactly what you said is important in that we are experiencing tremendous growth, and that is exciting from a transit perspective, and we have as a community and as a region, I think, have a commitment to not just growing out, right? We are growing up and growing out. And so that piece is exciting to me because it really, it enhances the market for transit, and it enhances our ability to serve those new markets. So I'm just excited to continue growing Metro along with the rest of the city, and meet those needs so that hopefully we can grow sustainably. Unlike many of the cities that have grown, the last 20, 30 years, we can grow much more sustainably.
Yeah, you're seeing that with your colleagues, Matt Wachter, Heather Stouter, who are implementing different planning techniques, right, to ensure we have transit-oriented development. We have more density on and near transit lines. We're looking at things like transportation demand management, and we're looking at transportation management associations, things that really weren't in the vernacular. Yes, this is a lot of acronyms. It's acronym soup, but these things matter. And as an organization, DMI is fully supportive of what's happening here with transit and making sure that we can get people in and out and through downtown as quickly as possible. It's the only way we can do things here in downtown. We have an isthmus. We're not going to add land. We're not going to do anything else. And we're seeing density grow, as we talked about, 6,500 units just in the downtown. So we want to say a huge thank you to our friends at Metro Transit. Justin, you and the team have done an excellent job. So thank you for what you're doing, and let us know how we can help in any way. So thank you for joining us today, Justin. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So you've been listening to our advocacy update. That's Justin Stuehrenberg, the general manager of Metro Transit. We're so excited that he was able to join us and give us all these updates about the amazing amount of things that are happening here. Thank you to Chris Gillings and the team at Sanair for your continued sponsorship. We are so thankful. And also to our friends at the Fiore Companies and Hush Blackwell. I'm Jason Ilstrup, president of Downtown Madison Inc. We'll see you soon for our next advocacy update, or we'll just see you downtown. Talk to you soon. Bye now.